Welcome to another episode of Anyone Have a Pencil? Today I'm joined by Kevin Kruger. Kevin is the son of a Hall of Fame basketball coach, Lon Kruger, and also had an amazing career as a collegiate and professional basketball player. Currently, Kevin is the head coach of UNLV men's basketball in Las Vegas, Nevada, my alma mater. We explore leadership, best practices for preparation, and we also look into how the NIL has changed collegiate sports forever. Kevin was a great guest and also provided a lot of value to us as far as leadership and steps that you can take to improve your life. And I hope you enjoy this episode.
All right, we're live with Coach Kruger. Is it weird to hear that?
I'm getting more and more used to it, but yeah, I mean, if I'm walking with my dad somewhere and someone says coach, I still look at him. Kind of assume that they're talking to him, but yeah, it was definitely weird at first.
I bet. One thing I've been, most people might not know this about you, but you were a hell of a basketball player before you became a coach. And one thing I've been fascinated by, I actually had an MLB All-Star that was drafted in the 40th round and made it all the way to, major leagues, and then became an all-star. And it's fascinating to me. I hope you don't find this as an insult, but somebody that's not physically imposing, you're not running the fastest 40 time, you're not 44-inch vertical guy. So a lot of that's got to be mindset, hard work, preparation. I mean, being a coach's kid and growing up in that environment, what really propelled you towards excelling in an otherwise, overly competitive sport for, crazy athletes?
Yeah, I think, just a lot of thoughts going through my head right now, but I think a lot of it is, being the coach's kid helps just in terms of, because as you know, as an athlete, it's trial and error. I mean, everything is trial and error about what you can do and what you're capable of. Because it's all about advantages and where the advantages are, where you can do something somebody else can't, how you can neutralize somebody else maybe that has advantages. And that's what all sports come down to, right? If you can hit a fastball, don't throw them a fastball. Those sort of things.
Sure.
Same thing. Football, I'm sure big up front, spread them out. Then so it kind of I think it goes across the board, but just kind of instilling, I think, a security, because I think even as a young kid, you're stubborn, you're hard-headed, all kids are, not just most, but just finding the angles, finding the where you can the security, I guess, is the best way to put it, of what works, what doesn't, what you're expected to do, because that's what the elite defenders, I think, are just incredibly secure. The elite scorers, kind of the same thing. They're incredibly confident, and it doesn't waver much. But like you said, not being the most athletic, not being the biggest, you got to find those areas where you can kind of take what you're assumed to not be good at. Because I tell our guys a lot when we're doing group work or in smaller groups. I once I left college, I guarded the post probably about just as much as I did the perimeter, because it was 6'1", 190. Like, people thought, all right, well, get him in the post. So you learn how to do those things, but you've got to have that security of what you can live with and what you can't. And of course, some nights you just get beat. So they're bigger, faster, stronger, and you can't figure out a way to get them off balance, or you can't figure out a way for them to take shots you want, or you can't get open, and sometimes that's just what makes the better players. But I think that's just one of those things that it starts, of course, with just that security. Just do this. This is what coaches are looking for. This is what what they're thinking when they see you. This is what they need from you. And being that the size I was, it's you got to understand that when you give up a layup, even if you get 9 stops in a row, it's going to be, yep, there it is. Like, there it is. If somebody's not known for being a high IQ guy and you mess up one play, oh, there it is. There it is. But you, at the same time, you got to keep the confidence going, but also understand that you've got to be secure and just kind of knowing what you do, what you can do, and make that translate.
Sure. I mean, did you have like a chip on your shoulder or feel disrespected? I mean, again, you're not walking into a building 6'6" with a crazy vertical and any of that stuff, but you had a really elite career. You played overseas. I think you had some stops with some NBA teams along the way. Did you ever feel, like, guys, like, what's going on? Like, I'm outworking these guys. I'm still putting up points. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Always. I think one of the biggest compliments I ever got was a long time ago from Rob Evans is that, I've never had a problem finding an edge. I've never had an issue finding a kind of having that, because it transferred over to college or to coaching too. Well, he's a son of a Hall of Famer. Like, of course, like, nobody pays attention to the years spent coaching before getting a head coaching job. Everyone, the people that don't like me, they think I just rolled out of bed one day and said, "No, I want to coach. I want to try coaching." And so I was handed the job. So I know that the same thing in college. Well, people know his dad. That's the only reason he's here. Oh, people know his dad. That's the only reason, he's getting this opportunity in the NBA. And it's just, it follows you wherever. And yeah, I've never really had a hard time finding an edge and having a chip on my shoulder, because, like I said, there's just always going to be kind of that doubt, and that knowing that that's out there, knowing that is discussed it's one thing, but at the same time, I think instilled from my parents, is just the competitiveness. I love to compete. I love to problem solve with groups, with your team, with your teammates, with your coaching staff, and figuring out how to get things done is the part that's probably the most enjoyable throughout all of coaching.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think out the gate, a lot of that is short-lived, right? And then you get to put your work out into the world, and then they get to see, hey, like, he's improved UNLV's record. He's got some good recruits coming in, and then it starts separating itself from, he's just the Hall of Fame coach's kid, and that's all you can really do. And I grew up with a lot of coaches' kids, and they had all the advantages in the world and didn't do anything with it. So I almost think it's a little bit harder.
Well, I think
to have the expectation and then actually show up.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with understanding that, I felt there's no question. I mean, I grew up in a gym. I had every day when we lived in Florida, my mom would pick me up from school and drop me off. And this was back in the 90s. So I don't want to I don't want to get my parents, I don't want like CPS calling my parents, because this is in the 90s, where she would drive into the parking lot at it used to be called the O-Dome, now the O'Connell Center. Now I believe it's Exactech Arena or whatever the name of it is now. But she'd drive in the parking lot. I'd open the door, say, "I'll see you at home." I'd walk up, find a door that was unlocked, then walk in the arena and go shoot. And that was that was a lot of my childhood. Was they would be in practice, I would shoot. They would get done with practice. My dad would come down and shoot with me for a little bit, and then we'd go home. But and so that was certainly an advantage. I think that a lot of times with coaches' kids is there's almost like people think that we don't know that. We don't know that people can't get into a gym whenever they want it, and we know that we grew up with it, and to your point, it's there's a lot of advantages. I grew up, had a Hall of Fame dad, and when he said things, I might not have liked hearing it, but that didn't mean I didn't believe it or remember it or take it into account. And but yeah, I mean, if you're being, of course, as a competitor, you don't like hearing, well, this is the only reason, this is the only, it's kind of, those are the kind of the ones where you're just like, okay,
bring it on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll remember that as the kids say, keep that same energy. Like
Yeah, I see that a lot in business too. And I've actually had a conversation with this, some of my associates too, of like somebody that comes from a really successful family, let's just say financially or in business. Let's say their dad has built a really successful company, right? It's almost more impressive to me when that kid, carves their own path and does something else successful with that, because they have so many reasons to sit back and like rest on their laurels and not really, take life seriously or take opportunity seriously as it comes along. And, kind of harping that to the same thing. I mean, you look at Deion Sanders' kids in Colorado and, their dad, Hall of Famer, All-Star, and those kids are grinding every day to try to be the best that they can. You can't take anything away from them because their dad is who he is. Michael Jordan's son, not the same career. So, not the same opportunity. Do you feel like your whole life was kind of preparing you to be a coach, or is that something that after your playing career ended, that you were like considering other opportunities, or was it always going to be coaching?
Well, I just knew I wanted to be in the game. Growing up, it kind of, looking back on it, it was just kind of like the default answer, right? Because, everybody, when you see the successful coach, you see the successful parents, you kind of assume like that the kid obviously, right, is going to want to do that. You live a good life, you're financially stable, you're popular, all these things. And so that was a lot of times that was the default answer, I think. And it wasn't really something I gave a lot of thought to until probably my pro career started winding down. And it was kind of like, all right, like, you've now seen the college aspect, you've now seen the pro aspect, you've had those experiences, like, okay, so what are we going to do for the next 30 years or whatever it may be? And to be perfectly honest, at that point, it wasn't like, all right, I got to go coach. I got to go find a situation to coach. It was more like, I want to make sure I'm in the game and a part of the game and a part of sports even. And I actually had an opportunity with the San Antonio Spurs. As soon as I was done playing, I was with them for the summer, and R.C. Buford, who was the longtime general manager, was somebody we'd gotten to know really well. And he kind of, and I never sat down and talked to him about it, but he had kind of, I guess, inspired in a way, like that there are more things you can do in sports than coaching. Now, again, we're taking the hyper successful, right? You're not just taking successful when you're talking Spurs and RC Buford. So it's not like, well, I'm just going to go do that. But it was kind of like, okay, well, maybe if an opportunity in a front office somewhere, or an opportunity not directly on the court coaching presents itself, at that point, I was very open to it. But be that as it may, coaching kind of came up first, an opportunity from Jack Murphy at Northern Arizona. And it was right. It was one of those deals where it felt good. He was great. It was a great opportunity. And so, but I was still pursuing coaching. It's not like I was just sitting back saying, whatever happens, happens. I was still reaching out and trying to get into coaching, but that was kind of the first time I was really like, okay, well, there are other options in sports than just coaching. And, but the coaching opportunity came up first, and I was ecstatic and loved every day of it, and really happy it went that direction.
Yeah, well, I think all of us UNLV fans are glad that you chose coaching, and we're excited for what's coming up. This season. I was thinking back to like when I was in college at UNLV. You transferred. I think your dad got hired for, wasn't Arizona State, right?
Mm-hmm. I was at
UNLV, or you were at Arizona State, and then you transferred over to UNLV, which is like, at the time, not a lot of players did that. Mm-hmm. Now it seems like every college athlete is a free agent, and transfer portal is wild, and kids are getting paid and stuff now. Do you feel fortunate that you have guys like Saban that leave coaching because, they just don't want to kind of deal with this new environment. I'm not sure that was 100% of it, but, he's quoted kind of saying that. Do you feel fortunate that you started coaching, as this whole transition starts happening, you can adapt to it a little bit more? And how have you adapted to that?
Well, I mean, extremely. I did grow up in it. So it was a little bit, maybe for us younger kind of coaches on the younger side of it, I think it was a little bit of I'm not patting myself on it, but a little bit of a bigger adjustment maybe because I mean, growing up, it was the way it was, right? No NIL, no transfer portal, like the way that I was watching programs be built pretty much, and from my dad and his staffs were, this is how you do it. You get some guys, you get in a transfer too, they red shirt, you blend them together, and it's a very methodical, patient process. But you're consistent, you stay with what you believe. And now, it's been flipped on its head completely, in terms of the portal, and the expectations are through the roof for year one, because I think a lot of people think that the portal is just your, it's your get rich quick scheme in a way.
Right.
And it's, but I mean, you talk about my dad retired, Jay Wright retired, Coach K retired, Roy Williams retired, Saban retired. And I'm just mentioning a couple, but imagine doing something for 40 years and then all of a sudden it's just like, I mean, they would have had to learn an entirely new, a new calendar and a new approach. And they would have, because they're all hyper successful people. But, we talk a lot about our busiest. It used to be when the season ended, you didn't cross over much with as a player with your coaches. You didn't cross over much until really like the next fall. It was like a break. It was a true break. You lifted, you played with your teammates, and you still saw your coaches and talked to them, but they were so restricted on what they could do, that it was it's a very healthy in a lot of ways time apart when you spend so much time together now. And then, so that April and May was a break. You spent time, you got to see your family, you got to recruit, you got to do a little bit of gym time with your team. And now that is our busy season.
Yeah.
But we still have the fall recruiting. So now we've taken the fall recruiting and now we've just doubled it for April and May and June as well. And I think, that's one of those things that is way different than it was 10 years ago and continually changing. But it's also why I'm excited about, one of the reasons I'm excited for this year's team. I mean, we brought back 6 guys which doesn't sound like very much, but in today's day, it's a pretty good number. We have 4 guys out of the portal, and we brought 3 guys through recruiting last fall. So there's a lot of opportunity for the guys to mesh. And again, it's my first year here. We brought in 11 guys, and it's tough because they were all incredible guys, incredible players, teammates, but there's just not a lot of time to make that blend. And you've got different viewpoints, you've got different histories and different experiences, and you're just trying to make it blend so that each one of them gets out of that transfer what they were seeking. And that can be a very difficult thing to do when you've got that number of them. And so that's why one of the reasons we're really excited about this year's roster.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you don't really, I guess thinking about it makes a lot of sense, but you have 11 guys transfer in. They're all transferring in because they want to be, the man. And so you have to balance that expectation. There's only 5 guys on the court at a time. So, do you feel like that's changed your, coaching as far as player development? I mean, having 6 players back is great. But, a player doesn't feel like he's getting exactly what he wants, from you as a coach. He wants to transfer, and you kind of miss that, 4-year maturation process with somebody that could be a really good player by the time they're a senior. You feel like that's going to start missing from the game?
No doubt. I think, and hopefully he won't mind me sharing this. We have a rising sophomore this year named Brooklyn Hicks. Brooklyn was a Mr. Basketball in the state of Washington. He is, I believe, the county. It's either the county or the district, the all-time leading scorer. He's a school's all-time lead. I mean, he's got numbers and numbers of records. He had a very good career on the EYBL, playing for Rotary, and of course, just like every single situation for the last 75 years, you come in, and as a freshman, there's just things that it's just an adjustment period, and there's just little things that you have to adjust to, and just like coaches, we've got to learn freshmen have to learn coaches. And when he came in last spring and talked about wanting to come back, wanting to, to be one of the greats here and wanting to do, it was really kind of a breath of fresh air in a sense. And I'm not saying the other guys didn't, but his situation is a little kind of to what you're talking about, because you have to have a little bit of that headbutting and a little bit of that conflict to find out how you're going to make it work between, coach, you as a coach and the player, and how that can all work. Because I'm a firm believer that everybody that leaves after their freshman year, all you did was kind of get them ready for the next school, because you went through all those freshman battles and all those, like, well, why aren't I playing more? And it's like, you could be playing more. You might even deserve to play a little more. But you got to remember, there's a junior and senior that's kind of been through this, that is also playing and kind of finding that balance and, the daily life and just the millions of things we experience as freshmen. And in terms of getting better at the college level. So he's kind of one of those examples. It's good. He had frustrations last year, and I know that, and I don't hold any of that against him, because he's incredibly competitive, and he wants to play, and he wants to help win, and he wants to do all these great things. And it's just, as a coach, like you're just trying to balance it. You try to make everyone happy, but you try to balance, do this, do that. And so I'm really glad, I think that's a perfect example of kind of what you're talking about, because now we have a much different relationship than we did 365 days ago. Because 365 days ago, I'm hoping that we can explain the drill and he can understand it. I'm hoping the terminology makes sense and he can learn it as he goes. And now, a year under his belt, it's a much different energy and conversation, because we've done a lot of the kind of the necessary conflict, if you will, to kind of strengthen the relationship and the understanding. And that's why I think he's going to have a great year, along with a number of other guys. But that's kind of to your point about, you need that. You can't just every year just transfer and think it's going to be better. You got to you can't grow without being uncomfortable and learning things somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be, coachable at the end of the day, and you're going to get that no matter where you transfer to, and being able to, I guess, absorb that is what's going to set a lot of those guys apart. And that's why I was so curious about it, just because, at that level, everybody's talented.
Yeah.
And so what makes them, separate someone from being, a talented player, like in your mind, like your philosophy on this, like what separates someone from coming in, being Mr. Basketball, has all the talent in the world, to being a great college player, and their goal is to be an NBA draft pick? So what separates that?
Selflessness, I think, without a doubt. I think the guys, now again, we're excluding the Durants, the Beals, these guys,
the
unicorns that when they're 18, they could walk into any gym in the country and be the best one there. And, but excluding those guys, and you're taking a pool of tens of thousands of kids and saying, well, what separates these 30 from being drafted versus the 10,000 that aren't? And I think that the 30 that are, it's about the result. It's about winning. It's about the security of knowing it's going to work, continue, of course, work ethic, if all being equal. It's just kind of having that little bit, I think, of confidence and security and, trust that, just to continue to do this, continue to help my team win. Because I think that's one thing that's been lost a lot is, well, I have to go do this. And it's like, you don't. You have to do certain things, of course, to play in the NBA. But you also, if you're going to be one of the non-unicorns, like somebody who still needs to be noticed, you got to go help your team win, and you got to go help your teammates get better. You got to, be a team player, as the cliche goes. And I think that's what really separates a lot of those guys. And again, we're not talking about the guys who measure at, 6'10" barefoot with a 7'5" wingspan. I mean, those,
Right.
Those guys, that's a different conversation. We're talking about the 6'3" to 6'7", well, guys that are fighting for the same 2 or 3 spots.
So how do you instill that characteristic?
I think you just really try. We do a lot of team stuff here. Even in practices, it's a lot of playing together, competing against each other, but also playing. It just really is about trying to, because the outside noise is 9 times out of 10 what's going to mess a player's career up. Is an unfair expectation from, and I'm not even talking about their immediate family. I'm talking about even farther outside than that, whether it be social media or, somebody that kind of hops in and out of their life. I think that too many times that is way too big of a distraction. I'm listening to mom and dad, listen to you, coach, listen to the people that have kind of been with you and helped raise you and get you to where you want to get to. But the coaches, like, too many players don't listen to it. The communication should be with the coaching staff just as much as it should be with anybody else. Because when you talk about, well, I have to do this, it's like, well, if you want to do that, the best people to go talk to is probably the coaches and the ones that decide not only who's going to play, but how you're going to play in terms of with your style and how are you going to use your advantages and your skill set to make things work. Because if you're running gun mentality, but you're playing in a walk it up offense, then, you're going to have a giant contrast from a lot of people, including yourself. And so I think it's just a bit the communication of it and trying as hard as possible to kind of relay. I mean, our whole coaching staff played, and we'll all tell you down the line that the best years we ever had playing were those teams that were connected. And more times than not, those teams that were connected ended up having a lot of success. And those are the ones you remember as being the most fun, because really the success for the team at the end of the day was just as or more important than anything individual.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, trying to gel a whole team together is an art in itself, seems like. Like you were saying, you can get 5 transfers in that are all stars in their own right, but how do you get them to play together and, have each other's backs? And so, that being said, sounds like, then there's a lot of buzz about, UNLV basketball right now. I don't think UNLV's been, the same since you played there, since your dad coached there. How do you see what you're building now? Like, what are you excited about? Like, what do you see the future looking like?
Well, I think it's, we're excited we've improved record-wise every year. I thought last year, we finished 4th in the conference that sent 6 teams, so, a team that finished 5th, 6th, and 7th went to the NCAA tournament because they were able to avoid that non-conference game, that non-conference loss, which we stubbed our toe in the very first game of the season. And so I think just the excitement is that we now have a fair expectation of where we're at as a program, where the roster's at. Guys that experienced that last year, we're potentially a game away, maybe 2 from making the NCAA tournament as an at-large because of what they did and how they worked. And so I think the buzz is warranted. DJ Thomas, of course, is a great player that we're very excited about deciding to stay home. Jalen Hill coming back, also a local. Isaiah Cottrell, also a local, being here with a great group of guys, not from here, but all wanting to be here. And I think that's such a huge part of it now, just wanting to be somewhere, being happy with where you're at, and a good challenging schedule, and you kind of roll it all together. I think there's a good reason to be excited. And And then, of course, with what football is doing right now, I think that is the best thing for UNLV athletics as a whole, because it just continues to bring eyeballs to UNLV, and I think it's going to carry over to the winter sports, and hopefully we can carry it over to the spring sports through the winter as well. And it's a lot of fun to be around UNLV right now.
Yeah, it seems like the athletic department is, kind of hitting on all cylinders right now. So just from coaches they're hiring and, talent that you guys are able to attract now. Do you feel like any of that has to do with, growth in the city, professional sports teams being in Vegas now? Like what's been the catalyst because for the longest time, since Tarkanian, we haven't had like really any crazy recruits or, world-class teams. We had a lot of, talent come in, had a lot of teams, like your team, I think reached the Sweet 16 while you were in school. But I've always thought that like Vegas and that area of the country would be a breeding ground for like really good recruiting, really good growth. And we just hadn't had that. So in your mind, like what changed? What's the catalyst for that?
I think we've got a great, there's a great feel, there's a great energy and a great kind of atmosphere right now. And that bleeds over to recruits, and to the players and to the student athletes, the coaches. Like when you talk about President Whitfield, Eric Harper, there's a tone in their voice when they talk about sports and the excitement. Gene Canal in marketing, Andy Grossman in sports information. When you've got everybody that's excited about kind of tackling these projects and, okay, well, how do we get more people to the games? And there's an excitement. Or well, how do we get out there more and some more community outreach? And there's an excitement and there's an excitement from Eric Harper and President Whitfield about like, okay, we need to do this. Okay, like how do we figure out how to do that? And it's all kind of met with that good energy and that approach. It carries down, no question. And I think that as much as anything should be applauded. And that's not speaking ill on anything else. It's just, I think it's one of the things that there's been so much turnover and change at UNLV. It's just kind of been hard to be consistent. And of course, hiring Coach Odom, you got to give Eric Harper a pat on the back for that, because that he knows what he's doing. He's fun to watch. His teams are fun to watch. And of course, football is the most visible, part of any athletic department. So, what they're doing on the field, how they're playing, the way the coaches are with people is, it just creates a great energy. So when you bring recruits around and you get the players out in the hallways of the buildings or in the community, it's just kind of you can't really put a value on it, a tangible, number to it or anything, because it's just one of those things that just, when you walk through a quote unquote big time major athletic department, there's just a certain feel to it. And we've, I think, been able now to show recruits and players that we're right kind of in that discussion, and that's how it feels when you go through here.
Yeah, how has that helped you in recruiting? Is Vegas a draw? Outside of the school itself, do people want to come to Vegas?
Well, I will say we've never had a hard time getting the mom, dad, or aunt, uncle, or grandma to visit. That part's always easy. But yeah, we're also, part of the positive of Vegas, of course, is, as all the great things that come from being here and networking here and making a home here. It also gives opponents some easy things to pick at us, well, there's distractions, there's this, like, it's kind of one of those things where we have a ton of pros and we have some things that some people see as cons in terms of sending their 18-year-old to Vegas, and even though they don't know anything about it, but it's kind of that balance. And I think, just the direction of not only the program, but the city. We're going to have an NBA team here in not too long. We got Major League Baseball coming. You obviously got the Raiders, the success of the Knights. It's one of those things that I think that's certainly not hurting.
Sure.
is how much attention and is being brought to Vegas and all the people moving here as well. It's it just had such a negative stigma because of the gambling and the casinos. I mean, I can tell you how many times I had any interest between 18 and 25 in going to casinos and doing all that. Like that stuff didn't even hit my radar till after college. And I think it's one of those things that it can be an easy kind of negative for some families and players, but it can also be a really good positive because of everything. Once you get out here and you see all the opportunities and the places to live and all the things you can do outside of the strip and just within the city can be a really great thing for a lot of players.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a character test, right? It's like, you're going to have all the temptation, in the world, but, if you're really dedicated to what your goal is, you kind of shove those aside and let's get to work.
Well, if you're a student athlete and you're going to get in trouble for, okay, let's just say we're in Vegas, obviously, so you're going to get in trouble because you go to parties and you drink. I would guarantee you that same person is going to get in trouble in Podunk, wherever.
Yeah.
Right now it might not be on the front page or on social media because it's not Vegas, but at the same time, if college towns have just as much trouble, I would imagine, as student athletes do here in Vegas.
Yeah, sometimes more so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if there's less of a social activity, for sure.
Yeah. So, one big rivalry that's always been kind of famous, and especially when I was in school, there was UNLV BYU. So didn't BYU, they left the conference, right? They're not.
They left a while ago.
Yeah. So do you kind of miss that?
Yeah. So that was something our players have asked me before is, what was it like when you played like Reno, for example? They say, like, was it like that when you played Reno? And it's like, well, my year here, we actually didn't play Reno here. We only played them up there because they were in the WAC at the time and we were Mountain West. Right. BYU was kind of our like, you couldn't put too many guys in the same room from those two fan bases and have a good result, and you
couldn't get a seat to the games either. I mean, yeah. I remember those were insane.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of our, as far as I remember, that little 2-3 year stretch right there. And then San Diego State kind of was right there in it, and New Mexico. And then of course, when Reno came over the Mountain West, I think that's become kind of reignited that rivalry pretty good. But the BYU rivalry was really, really good there for about 4 or 5 years. And but then when they left, I think we only played them, I think, twice since then. So
okay. So who's the new rival?
I don't think it'd be new. I think it was just more went back to the traditional, I would say, Reno, San Diego State, and New Mexico. I think those are the three schools, if I'm not mistaken. I know we've played Reno and New Mexico, number 1 and number 2. We've played them more than anybody else. And I believe San Diego State is climbing that as well. So it kind of just, if you talk to our fans, I think they're gonna talk about those three schools the most. But Reno's certainly gonna be at number 1 with our fan base, and certainly our alums and administration.
Yeah, that's always been there. Are you surprised by anything from the NIL, like just that you didn't expect, that's now kind of made its way into the building or into the team, that's good or bad?
No, a lot. Just the numbers. I mean, we had no idea. I mean, when this was been 4 years now, 3 years now, I mean, if you would have said that these were the numbers that people were going to be at and going to be getting, I just would have been very surprised, because there's no return when you talk about these collectives that are giving out millions and millions of dollars. There's no other return other than their favorite football team or basketball team winning games. They don't get anything back on it. And so for those numbers to reach kind of what they have, I think is certainly a surprise. I've always been in favor of of players getting far more than we got like when I played. You know, like, I mean, I would be willing to argue that as long as it's college athletics, we should probably tie it to education somehow, whatever that may be. You know, at the end of every year, if you're in good state. I mean, we could talk about that for a whole nother day and a whole nother show. But at the same time, I do believe that they should be getting some of the money. They earn it and they bring it in, but I think that would have been my surprise, is like where these numbers are just continuing to climb to, but again, it's kind of I'm all for the athletes. I sound like a grumpy old man, and I certainly sound like a grumpy coach when you talk about anything that's like may not be just kind of letting what's happened now happen. Like I don't like the marriage necessarily of the portal and NIL. I think those are just kind of a bad. Do I have a solution? No, I don't have a way to fix it. I don't have any perfect scenario, but I think that because what we've become is, as you know, I played in Europe for a little while. We've become Europe. We've become European basketball, where you go places for a year and then you bounce over to the next place. And it's definitely different. It's not college sports as we know it. But 5 years from now, when those kids that are in 8th grade start college, they're not going to know any different. It's going to be what they're used to and just kind of the way of the world. And I would like to see something, but like I said, I don't have the perfect scenario either. So that's why I don't really speak on it too much.
Yeah, I mean, I was in huge support of that when it came out too, just because, you played college athletics, you know how demanding it is. You're not, most, college athletes are not, majoring and going into, the STEM fields and spending all their time hitting the books. I mean, they're there to perfect a craft playing a sport. Mm-hmm. And they should be rewarded for that, the amount of money that the university is making from that. But do you see a scenario in which, when a player, let's say, comes to a school, that they end up signing longer term, contracts? Is that a possibility?
I think so. And our compliance here, and we're all, and it should be, honestly, because right now there's absolutely nothing that binds a student athlete to a school. It was Jay Billis 6, 7, 8 years ago when a player would transfer and the school would say, well, hold on, you signed here. Like, you can't just pick up and go. And he would go on those Twitter rants, and I'm not saying he's wrong. So then all of a sudden it became, well, they should be able to transfer wherever they want. And they should be, and there's just and now that NIL has entered, which can't be tied to how they're playing. I think we saw, was it LSU maybe last year, where the kid, he lost the starting job, but you can't take away the NIL because it's not tied to playing. Well, we're just kidding ourselves. It is tied to playing. It's 100% tied to playing and how you play. And it's one of those, like, it's like you would just want it to be something that could, because these longer relationships, like you said, you could play in Europe for 25 years if you want. You only get 4 years of college basketball or college football or college sports or whatever. And to have the ability to maybe, from the coaching side, to take a group of 3 or 4 freshmen and say, well, you're going to be here 2 years, you're going to be here 3 years, or whatever it is agreed upon. I think that's better, because then both sides can kind of, okay, now let's figure out a plan to where you don't have to be in the NBA tomorrow. You could get there 2-3 years from now, and then we can work toward that. And I think that potentially for a lot of people could be better.
Yeah. Like, something's got to give, right? This is all new to everybody, and it sounds like you're navigating it pretty well.
We're trying, but what's true on Monday isn't necessarily true on Tuesday. So
yeah, that seems like just the nature of the world right now.
Yeah, very true.
How much is changing. So, Coach, I really appreciate your time, and we're really excited for the upcoming season. And, how can people support, your program, support UNLV athletics?
The first one, of course, NIL. any support to NIL is always greatly appreciated. But then come if you're local, come to games. Games are Eric Harper, President Whitfield. I mean, the one thing they did a couple years ago is really, really did some ticket packages that can there's something that everybody I think can get involved in and come and support them and just be there for the guys. I think the one thing that gets missed in all of this, and that the world's moving so fast in the college athletics business, is just going to games, supporting your favorite team. If it's UNLV, getting to the game, cheering loud, having a great time. Because last year we had the pop-up game versus Boston College in the NIT on a Sunday afternoon, and it was right there in the discussion for our best atmosphere, electricity on the season. And it was one of those where it was just, I think it was $10 a ticket, and people came and did an unbelievable job of supporting, and the guys still talk about that. There was an electricity and a buzz in the arena, and you can only create that with people being there, being excited, getting loud. And so as much as anything, I think just if you're local, coming to games, supporting the guys and cheering them on and hopefully helping us win a game.
I love it. How do people support NIL?
We have a website. It's friendsofUNILV.com that they can go to, and there's kind of a menu list of things that they can do. But then there's also, I mean, in today's age with social media, most of these guys have some form of representation that if they wanted to have them out to a birthday party or have them out to a work event, and we're willing to pay them for their time, that through one of their social media avenues, I'm sure they'd be pretty easy to reach. And our guys are great in the community. They're great with people, great with young fans and hanging out with them. So a lot of times they do it just out of their own kindness, but any willingness and opportunity to throw in NIL would of course help the university.
Awesome. And when's your first game? When's the season start?
So we just opened up a great season or non-conference schedule, but one of the ticket packages offerings that they've done is they're packaging the first two together. So we open with Alabama State on Monday the 4th, and then the 9th we have Memphis that Saturday at home. So fans I don't think they're able to go buy single season tickets yet, but they are allowed to get those two in a tandem. So another great job, in my opinion, from marketing, ticketing, and Eric Harper in getting people to those first two games so that we can show the community and show the fan base the group, but also help us get off to a good start.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time, and we're excited for the season. Thanks for everything you're doing and giving back to the community, coming back to UNLV, and hopefully, rescuing us from nowhere land.
Hopefully. I think we've got a good group. They'll be fun to root for.
All right, Coach. Appreciate you.
All right.
All righty.